In Minamata, there were many severe cases already appearing when the poisoning came to the attention of local health authorities. The first official discovery of Minamata disease occurred in 1956, but what were the patient's conditions 10 years before they became severe? The opportunity to study that was gone in Japan. The mercury poisoning in Canada could provide that understanding. In order to see what the early stages of Minamata disease were like, I had to go outside Japan.
When Dr. Harada first visited Grassy Narrows and White Dog in 1975, he examined 89 residents and found atypical symptoms. Although he recorded the same symptoms among residents in both communities, no one had all of the typical symptoms of the Hunter-Russell syndrome. All the symptoms were mild. Two-thirds of the examinees indicated lower levels of mercury than the safety guideline. However, their mercury levels were higher in the summer when they ate more fish. He did not think the findings should be dismissed. Likely, these were the early symptoms of the disease. He stated, "By the time you see an acute, indisputable case of Minamata disease, it is too late." In 2002, Dr. Harada and Dr. Fujino conducted clinical neurological examinations on 57 residents of Grassy Narrows. Although none of the residents were defined as at risk, 45 residents showed symptoms of mercury poisoning, nearly 80% of the total examinees.
It's everyone in Grassy Narrows, from the oldest to the youngest. And Dr. Harada said that, and I just want to briefly, it says 9 people first examined in 1975 were re-examined in 2002. It says they showed only mild symptoms 27 years ago. As in 2002, the mercury levels in the hair samples of the same 9 people had decreased and are under the safety level. However, 7 of the 9 had progressed from mild symptoms to typical complications.
Hair samples from the residents examined in 2002 indicated mercury levels averaging 2.07 parts per million. This was well under the safety guideline established in Japan of 50 parts per million.
Even being exposed under 50 parts per million, if prolonged, could cause symptoms. That's my theory. I think it's correct.
In the article, a Health Canada expert, Paul Stroick, was quoted as saying, "The research was telling us mercury levels had been dropping and interest in the community appeared to be waning." He added that Dr. Harada's work has reignited interest.
We're trying to ask Dr. Harada, hopefully when he comes in at the end of August, he's coming down again for 3 days. So hopefully these are the things that we need to know how we could better tackle, or better ways now we could still survive for those that are affected already on mercury. It's in them now. No way that they'll get better, you know.
I have one heck of a time trying to stay balanced.
Hard time, huh?
Yeah, hard time, yeah.
I've been coming to Grassy Narrows for approximately 15 years, every 1 or 2 weeks. And it's very difficult to differentiate between when you see a patient as to what's causing some of their deficits, especially if they have neurologic deficits, as to whether or not it's alcohol-related, diabetes-related, other substances, or perhaps mercury problems. So certainly over the years we've had a good relationship with some of the specialists in Winnipeg, i.e. some of the neurologists in Winnipeg who are helping to follow patients with mercury poisoning here.
Government of Canada and the provincial government of Ontario, with the pulp and paper industry, agreed to do two things. There was a settlement with each of the two bands.
As a settlement, Grassy Narrows received $8.6 million. White Dog received $8 million. This was to compensate the residents for the permanent loss of their jobs and their primary food source. It was also intended to prevent any further legal action. At the time, it would have averaged out to only $14,000 per person. Both communities used the money for economic and social development, and no individual received direct compensation. The agreement was reached in 1985. 15 years had passed since residents lost their jobs and the opportunity to eat fish.
And then a mercury compensation board was set up, which I sit on, and Brian has become kind of the chief neurologist for.
According to the Memorandum of Agreement, members of the bands who appeared to be affected by conditions reasonably consistent with methylmercury poisoning were entitled to apply for assistance.
The legislation says that we measure, we do a clinical exam, which Brian does, and we use a form, and we measure things like sensory capacity, and if there are findings, points are given to those findings. And if the points add up to a certain number, anything above 6 points, the board then gives a monthly settlement.
The Mercury Disability Board issued a historical report in 2001. Of 509 applicants between 1986 and 2001, 82 people received compensation in the first round. 57 more applicants were recognized upon appeal.
When I first applied for that Mercury disability thing, and that first time I didn't make it, like I didn't qualify for what do you call that, disability. So I tried again a couple of years ago, and that's when I started to notice about my feet and my legs. They're starting to act up, and sometimes I had a hard time feeling. Finally, the doctor told me I had those some kind of symptoms like that.
Listening to you today, am I right to assume that the Canadian government has officially acknowledged the occurrence of methylmercury poisoning in humans?
Yeah, they only acknowledged that people had been exposed to mercury, and then concluded it was very hard to tell whether symptoms were from mercury.
All right.
So, to be generous, we're just going to compensate anybody who has symptoms.
それはいいんで評価できるんだけど、そのことが逆にその因果関係が少し曖昧になったってことでしょうね。So it's kind of both ways. Being generous, it's good.
Yes.
But on the other hand, the government could remain, undecided.
Yes. Yeah, I'm not aware, Michael, that the Canadian government or the provincial government has ever acknowledged that any number of cases that were from mercury poisoning. The way they got out of doing that was by using this no fault. It doesn't, whether it was mercury or anything else, if you have a physical finding, it's compensated. So they've never had to say there are 20 or 60 or 200 people that have suffered from mercury poisoning. It's never been stated.
So
what happens to us then is any other health-related information is only information to us. It's not used as part of the assessment or final decision of who will get a claim.
I'm sorry, could you repeat it?
Well,
the only tool that we use and score by is the assessment tool.
we only use Brian's physical exam.
I see.
If he finds sensory loss,
Okay.
and there's enough findings, we
Right.
compensate. So we have no idea about
Including the blood, including the monitoring,
yes.
the result of health kind of the monitoring.
We don't know what
Right.
any of these individuals
So
have as a
usually-
mercury level.
Ah, yes, I remember. She's been waiting. So, 1975. Yeah, I met her.
Do you have any problem in your
With the
day?
magen. Toke bok wisige binik.
One more, please.
And try your left leg to your left heel to your right knee.
Okay. Also, thank you.
Very typical.
One small, please. Okay. Yes, you are very difficult to walk too straight.
Yeah.
Because one is a disturbance of sensory and disturbance of coordination.
Yeah, coordination is not,
Movement, yeah.
that's not there.
Okay. That symptom is.
In 1976, the residents decided to block a road through White Dog. The road provided sportsmen access to tourist camps. Sports fishing continued under catch and release regulations. However, some lodge owners hid this information from visitors. Commercial fishing, a key source of income for local residents, had been banned. White Dog blockaders claimed sports fishing should also be banned to protect everyone from eating the fish. Sports fishing was allowed to continue after all.
I'm challenging my own government with this visit from people from Japan and helping us find the truth to what's going on here in White Dog. White Dog is very excited and happy to have you people here.
What a pleasant surprise to be welcomed like this. I am recognizing my role and responsibility.
かえって責任が重くなった気がします。
Steve Fobister dropped by to welcome the research team. Dr. Kazuhito Tsuruta noticed his speech impairment.
Your sensation, I examine your feeling.
I found a very special type of sensory disturbance in mercury-contaminated areas. This symptom is rarely caused by other diseases.